Folks,
President Biden has churned out a entirely new economic policy called Bidenomics.
Yeah,
I like
Bidenomics
that.
is a good name.
I like that.
It really helps when you have an E in your name. Donald Trump could never.
True.
Reagan,
Trumpnomics.
True.
Reaganomics.
Very
Bidenomics.
true.
Like, you would feel like it would be a little bit of a cringy name.
No,
Right?
who would feel that?
Well, like, if you know, when you're just putting your name and combining it with economics. And you feel like, especially from like the Biden administration, you know, like
Steven. I don't want to be that guy, but Stevenomics would go hard.
Stevenomics.
You should get to work on that.
I'll work. Maybe I need some of the coke from the White House.
Tomonomics.
Tomonomics doesn't really work.
Tomonomics.
It's not terrible. It's not terrible. But you would think that people would take this and be like, that's cringy. Biden administration is trying to pander to the fucking woke mind virus, but I really like it.
If there's one thing we know, it's that Gen Z and the younger demographic of American voters love a little nickname.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
It's good politics.
So the slogan is middle out, bottom up. Joe, since you've done some incredible research on this,
resident economics expert Joe Piccarello.
Thank you very much. So basically, the idea is you're taking on Reaganomics, right?
good evening.
Reaganomics is the classic, like, America loves Reaganomics, America loves Ronald Reagan, whatever. Used to love Reagan, not anymore. We hate Reagan now as a country.
Reagan and we're proud.
But the idea behind Reaganomics is this idea that we call trickle-down economics, which is the idea that if you cut taxes for corporations and the wealthiest Americans, that money will trickle down to the rest of the nation.
People.
The middle class, and it'll grow the middle class, and it'll grow the wages of the poorer Americans. And the idea is that, like, if you give rich people more money, they're going to spend it on creating jobs, and they're going to reinvest it in their business.
Building libraries.
Libraries.
Well, it's all bullshit. None of it ever happened. We've been doing it for the last 40 years, and it doesn't work.
Historically speaking, giving all the money to just a couple people, it hasn't worked out? That's crazy.
It's news to Reagan, I guess. But also not, because he used a ghoul. We're in a new era now. America is much more progressive than it was 40 years ago. We elected Reagan in a landslide. We just ousted Donald Trump for a very woke socialist communist mix of a president.
Right. Hates the country.
Hates America. Bidenomics is, instead of trickling down wealth, it's growing from the
Middle out, the bottom up.
So the opposite of the submarine implosion.
Wow, that was good. That was good, nice. And not late at all.
Not.
That was right on time, Steven.
So it's basically like it's a combination of it's a cosmic gumbo.
It's a cosmic gumbo
of Keynesian economics. The idea that if you tax the wealthy and reinvest in the nation, you'll grow the economy. Combined with pro-union policy. A president who is supportive of the PRO Act, which is a pro-union piece of legislation, which never passed, but he's pro it.
Pro at it.
Yeah. And it's kind of coming at the perfect time, this rebranding of Bidenomics, because we had just in Q1 of 2023, we had 2% GDP growth, which is a revision up from the 1.2% that originally they marked it as. So it's actually a pretty substantial amount of growth for a nation supposedly entering a recession, which economists have been predicting.
Any day now.
It's coming, guys. It's coming.
Unemployment's at 3.6%, lower than 4%, which means we're effectively at full employment, which is excellent. And the PCE is at 3.8%, which is the lowest it's been since 2021, which means that inflation is continuing to fall. So the indicators of the economy are strong currently, and they're getting stronger month by month. So effectively, it's not necessarily about what Bidenomics is about, but it's the brand that Bidenomics is attempting to assume, which is this strong growth, low inflation, low unemployment, competition for small businesses, all that good stuff, reinvestment, raising taxes.
Love that stuff.
That's Bidenomics for you.
And
So yeah,
I think the Republicans have been pretty successful in branding Biden's first couple of years of the presidency as, oh, he's a nice guy, but his economy stinks, and it's just not true.
It's not. And everything you just talked about is something that is so incredibly common sense. We have all the statistics. We have for the everyday person, or rather for not the everyday person, the the people who are really invested in numbers and metrics to show how the economy is doing. We have those to back it up. But then you also have this message that is just so focused in common sense. Investing in the everyday person will reward the economy more than it costs. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's something that, as a citizen, makes me feel proud, right? That makes me feel like I have a future. My generation has a future. The generation after me has a future in front of it. Because we're putting money
to do with that.
You have nothing to do with it. And that kind of gives me this vision that as a country, we're taking steps to make it better than we left it, right? And with that comes economic increases for the future.
It's like people need to disassociate the idea of, oh, we pay taxes for the military and police, and that's true. We pay taxes to those things, but we should also begin to associate paying taxes with growing our community, with building roads, building bridges, water slides, universities, like all these programs that help. Trains is a big one. Trains is a big one.
Trains.
I love trains.
And it's really, really important to see, because I think this could be the first steps to something much greater in America, something we probably won't see over the next 5 to 10 years, but much further down the line, where we have essentially turned our backs to the kind of a vision where we believe in public investment to grow our future. Right? Since Reagan, we kind of turned it all around. And this is the first step going back towards that.
Absolutely. If it works, if the messaging works.
Yeah. Well, if the messaging works, that's true.
Well,
I have a suspicion, though, and this is not just me being a partisan hack, but I have a suspicion this messaging will work because
fancy name?
Usually, well, it's got a fancy name. It's got a great name. It's got an effective name. But not only just that, it's Republicans tend to dominate economic polling because Republicans focus on economic messaging. So typically they go, inflation's too high, your taxes are too high, everything is too high. If you elect me, I'll bring everything down.
Taxes? Who needs them?
Right. But instead, because of, in large part, Ron DeSantis, Republicans are now focused on culture war issues. And they've always been focused on culture war issues generally. They've been focused on hating Muslims, hating gay people, hating usually. But now they're only focused on hating trans people, focused on hating gay people, focused on hating immigrants. They're hyper focused on these culture war issues, and they're not spending any time defining the metrics of the economy.
I just hope that, this can set the next steps in place where, there is the chance that you're saying where the messaging doesn't follow through. It feels like it will to me as someone who doesn't follow economic factors too incredibly closely. Just hearing the name and what it's about, I feel confident in it. And I think a lot of, third-party voters, undecided voters could feel the same way, especially with how quickly we have recovered, in the past couple of years.
Right. Republicans love to use the recovery from the pandemic as like a way to say like that it's not that impressive because the numbers were so bad in 2020. Of course, there's going to be growth, but like, it's not a bad thing that there's economic growth. Like that should be celebrated.
It's not just that there's economic growth. It's the fact that our economic growth is better than our fellow countries.
Very true.
People who we are right beside, we went through the exact same thing. We are doing better coming out of it. You know, and I really hope that the Democratic Party can see the success in it and continue with this messaging and the actual follow through for it. And less so than that, I hope this really wakes some politicians up in DC to, really put country first for once, rather than just if the messaging is good.
Yeah. You mentioned those statistics, particularly about representative or comparable nations. It's not only that we're not just doing good, we are doing the best.
Yeah.
We're doing like the idea that inflation is self-incurred by the Biden administration is the most ridiculous narrative that any Republicans ever pushed, because every single nation across the world was experiencing inflation at the exact same time, was experiencing negative GDP growth at the exact same time, was experiencing unemployment growth at the exact same time. It was all obviously because of one factor, which was the pandemic. The pandemic created supply chain shortages. It took people out of work. Killed a lot of people. It slowed the economy. It did all these things. The pandemic ending in about 2021, late 2021, you can see in the numbers a return to positive GDP growth. We were the first nation to return to positive GDP growth. And you can say that that's just because we came out of the pandemic and everybody else did. But we were the only nation who had positive GDP growth in 2021. And that I would attribute to the American Rescue Plan, the $2.1 trillion bill passed by the Democrats to reinvest in America, whether that be child tax credits, infrastructure projects, stimulus checks, all these things that stimulated the economy and helped grow the economy.
That they got rid of as soon as they could.
Yeah, so they got rid of those things, but
and we talked about this a little bit in the past too, that especially when he passed the big spending bill for infrastructure, when Biden passed it through Congress, one of the main talking points is in the next 6 months, year, you are literally going to be able to look outside and see construction happening on roads, on building infrastructure.
That could be good. That could be good Republican propaganda, though.
Yeah,
Biden closed all your roads.
Falling apart.
Everything's broken all of a sudden. It worked fine before. What happened?
Did you hear about I-95?
Yeah, that was fast.
Yeah, that was
incredibly
fast. That was fast.
Classic New Jersey.
I feel like we are finally starting to see the outcomes of these giant spending packages and how it is going to help us in the long run. And this is what sucks about running on infrastructure, right? You are not going to see the outcomes and the fruit of your labor for years.
Yes.
Takes a while.
That's why it's so hard to run on and actually act on sometimes. That's why culture wars become so popular as running points.
It's cheap.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're exactly right, Stephen. That's exactly why culture war issues. But I think that at this moment, culture war issues are, for the first time since, I don't even know. I think culture war issues are a losing battle for Republicans.
I agree.
You look in the polling, and not only do you see, first off, that it's unpopular to hate on transgender people, it's also missing the moment. The moment right now is we are about to, for the next couple months, you're about to read in your newspaper, local and federal and national, you're going to read that inflation is continuing to fall, unemployment is continuing to fall, wage growth is continuing to go up relative to the rate of inflation. People are going to see more disposable income in their pocket. by the year's end, they're going to be wealthier than they were a year ago. Food prices are going to have stopped climbing. Gas prices are going to have stabilized. The economy is going to be in a better spot, and people will remember when that began and when they started branding Bidenomics.
Yeah. So all of this we've talked about is what the Biden administration is trying to package into this new slogan, this new term, Bidenomics. It seems like it stuck a little bit for a couple days. It was trendy. We'll have to see. Yeah, it was trendy. You know, there's a good handful of articles written about it, what it is. It seems like the administration is really just picking this up. They didn't actually create it themselves.
True.
It was this rogue article that came out where the reporter, coined the name, which is actually pretty common sense. Bidenomics. It works. And they picked it up and they ran with it. So this isn't necessarily anything new that the administration is doing. It is just packaging together what they have done in an easily digestible form for the everyday voter, right?
I think they got to just keep hammering it home. I wouldn't even engage with Republicans on culture war issues.
Exactly.
They can chirp about it all they want. The Republican strategy for saying Democrats are bad at economics is they just point to the big price tag on whatever bill is in Congress and they say, look how much money is they're trying to spend. Are they kidding?
Are they kidding?
Where are they going to get this money? By printing?
Right. If
Not
you
by taxing us, right?
explain where the money's coming from, what the money's doing, people start to see what the money's doing. I think you could start to see some real political success.
Yeah.
And Biden's going on a speaking tour. It started last week in Detroit talking about Bidenomics, but he's going somewhere else on Friday, and then he's going to start traveling the country.
When is he coming to New York City?
That's a good question. I
When
don't
is he
know.
coming to Jersey?
Not soon
We're
enough.
gonna go see him and bill it as a business expense.
That would be
One
great.
thing about Trump that I'll give him credit for is he came to New Jersey a lot.
So all of this it feels good. We're probably gonna touch back in on it soon. As good Lord, the presidential election is literally
Coming
right
up.
around the corner.
It's
Oh my
coming
God,
up.
I know.
It's
coming up.
literally right around the corner, and this looks like it could be one of the major talking points.
It should
And
be.
It should be. I mean, we have to see if it sticks again, because I feel like it's kind of fallen off a little bit since that first story came out.
Well, you could
a
just
little bit
do
of
the
a hit.
Trump thing and say it every day for months, and eventually people will start to think it's true.
Yeah, but that's how it gets cringy. I don't know. Who knows? But this
necessarily.
is something. This is something that I think we all agree we can feel good about. Sadly, there is, news.
Before you transition, before you do a really good transition,
breaking
Steven,
my
I want to add.
terrible.
I want to add.
How
I
am I
want to
supposed
add
to do
one more
this
thing.
again?
I want to add one more thing because you made a good point. The name sounds cringy now, but think about the progression of Obamacare.
True.
Obamacare
Yeah.
used to be a very cringy, very unpopular thing. People
Mhm.
started to realize how much they needed the Affordable Care
Yeah.
Act, how much it really improved the lives of tens of millions of people across America. And all of a sudden, Obama is associated with Obamacare. Obamacare being a very popular thing now in America, an incredibly
Yeah.
popular thing.